So it'll really be back to our constitutional roots in this country, if that's what happens.
Well, that's very inspiring. There is a push back towards liberty, and we're very grateful for that. You noted recently, too, that there's a push at the supranational level for the Small Arms and Light Weapons Treaty, which, if enacted, would essentially erase our Second Amendment. You don't think they could actually disarm the people in this country, do you?
No, I think it would be impossible to disarm the people in this country. We're actually, along with Yemen, I think we're the most heavily armed society on the planet. And it would be absolutely impossible to disarm the citizenry. There might be an attempt to do it incrementally over the course of generations, but I think that's the only way that would happen. There are so many guns being produced each year, a couple of million guns per year in this country, that it's just mathematically impossible, if not socially impossible, to even envision the logistics of trying to disarm the American citizenry. It just can't happen. There's too many guns in circulation, and they're essentially the final guarantor of our freedom.
Well, and just for our international listeners who tune in and wonder why we care so much about guns, you hit the nail on the head. It is what stands between the people and a tyrannical government, and the government knows that. You certainly are more tuned in and have more connections than I do. What are you hearing from those who are in the military, any veterans, any active military? Are people waking up in the military as quickly as we hope they are?
Oh, definitely. In fact, I get emails every day from soldiers and airmen that are deployed in Afghanistan, and they have the same sort of concerns that you and I do. And on a personal level, they're worried about situations where, they might be separated from their loved ones and have difficulty in just getting back to the United States in the event of a societal collapse. That was the scenario that I put forth in my novel, Survivors. On a political level, though, they're becoming quite aware. There's a large number of servicemen, especially deployed overseas, that fully intend to file absentee ballots. They're fully engaged in the political process because they have a stake in it. They're the ones that are faced with repeat or even back-to-back overseas deployments that just go on and on and on. And it's not just the active military. It's the Army Reserve, the Air Force Reserve, and the National Guard that are also getting deployed over and over and over again. And it's burning them out. So they definitely have a stake in what's going on politically. And I can only anticipate that they'll become more and more politically active.
I just want to, it popped into my head as we talk about the military, and would the military actively suppress the people? Would they, might they instead choose to obey the Constitution, as Stuart Rhodes at Oath Keepers is trying to get folks to do in the military and the police, honor your oath to the Constitution. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Chicago with this NATO meeting coming up, where they're going to lock down Chicago, and there's all sorts of threats of arresting citizens and moving them, relocating them to Milwaukee, and it seems like a litmus test, doesn't it? It seems like a litmus test for martial law.
Well, a bit, but I think the whole rhetoric about martial law tends to be overblown because the logistics of implementing martial law would be daunting. Even in the United States, where we have a fairly sophisticated military, the numbers just don't add up for martial law being instituted for more than just a very short period of time. We have a military that's primarily deployed overseas right now. The military here in the United States, active and reserve components and National Guard, don't even have enough vehicles for training, much less live operations. The majority of the rolling stock for the U.S. military right now is in places like Bosnia and Afghanistan. They don't have the vehicles here. I mean, how do you institute martial law if you can't even get troops from point A to point B?
Right.
So I think that obsessing on martial law is probably not productive, but we do need to be on guard to guard our liberty, and we do need to speak up when there are abuses of our constitutional rights, especially the First Amendment. And I think that's the main implication that's going to come out of this upcoming NATO meeting in Chicago. and that is, I think that there's definitely the potential for squashing dissent. And if there's going to be a litmus test of anything, it'll be a litmus test of the control over the media, both the mass media and the alternative media during that time period.
Well, it is amazing, almost regardless of how bad things get economically or in terms of fascism or any of these areas that we talk about. There are so many people in this country that still have not woken up and seem completely unable to face the reality of it all. So let's end this by talking again and recapping maybe the top 5 most important things that people need to do to prepare. If you had to pick the 5 things people should focus on, let's talk about that, because as you know, we really talk about ownership of physical precious metals, but that's just one aspect, and that may not even fall in your top 5. I don't know.
I would say it's around number 5. Far more important are water, food, self-defense, and do-it-yourself medicine, I think would be the top 3, followed by diversifying into precious metals and also having some fairly elaborate communications equipment. Precious metals, I think, should be kept in perspective. Yes, they're wonderful. Yes, they should be the basis of sound money and a sound currency. But to put precious metals ahead of something like food storage or water filtration, I think is a huge mistake. It's only after you have your beans, bullets, and Band-Aids squared away that you should consider investing in precious metals. And then I would recommend silver first, long before you buy any gold, because silver has greater utility for barter. Gold is simply too compact a form of wealth for practical barter. Granted, you could take a quarter ounce or a 10th ounce gold coin and cut it up with a cold chisel, I suppose, but it's really too compact for day-to-day transactions. The ideal form of wealth in precious metals, in my opinion, is U.S. circulated dimes and quarters that are minted 1964 and earlier. A silver dime will buy you a loaf of bread or a can of beans in the midst of a crisis. I don't know what a 1 ounce Krugerrand will buy you. What's it going to buy you? A whole house? A car? Again, it's just too compact a form of wealth.
And for those to whom this is still pretty new stuff, this survival prep stuff, are there any companies that you endorse, companies that people can use to start preparing? And in addition to that, is it okay? Are there items that a guy can buy at Costco, at Sam's Club? Is there an easy way to start this journey?
For some items, like bulk foods, your local Costco or Sam's Club is actually a pretty good place to buy.
Okay.
Because you're not having to pay shipping costs. If you're buying rice in 50-pound sacks to repack yourself in 5-gallon plastic buckets with oxygen-absorbing packets and Mylar liners, if you can figure that out yourself, and it's not rocket science. I have it all described in my blog at survivalblog.com. That actually is one of the least expensive ways to stock up. At Costco, the thing that we buy the most of is actually olive oil. Costco stores sell virgin olive oil in plastic bottles. And I stress buying it in plastic bottles because it can be frozen. If you buy it in glass bottles, it can't. The bottles will shatter. But the plastic bottles expand just enough to allow you to freeze olive oil. So instead of a 2-year shelf life, it has a 10-year or 12-year shelf life if you store it in the back of your freezer or in the bottom of your chest freezer. The other items I buy in bulk would be things like multivitamins. We buy a lot of canned refried beans. We buy a lot of other bulk foods, things like flour, pancake mix, that sort of thing. But for anyone who is really short on time, say they're a professional like a doctor or a lawyer, and they don't have the time or the inclination to do that packing themselves, then there's a number of vendors. A lot of them advertise on my website, in fact, on my blog, like Safe Castle, Ready-Made Resources, Best Prices Storable Foods. There's a number of them out there that are quite good. There's a few others that don't advertise on my site that I can recommend. The thing that's crucial that people need to keep in mind is do comparison pricing, and as much as possible, deal with smaller companies rather than mega companies, because mega companies tend to keep records indefinitely. Small mom-and-pop owned companies, like the ones that advertise at my blog, generally don't keep records for more than a year, and they're very unlikely to ever be handing over lists of customers to the powers that be. Buy from the mom-and-pop companies, and when it comes to things like firearms and ammunition, definitely avoid leaving a paper trail. You should be buying at local gun shows with cash and not leaving your name. I don't recommend buying guns from federally licensed dealers. In about 45 of the states, you can buy firearms face-to-face from fellow private parties at gun shows with no paper trail whatsoever, and people should definitely take advantage of that if they do live in one of those jurisdictions.
Well, we sure do appreciate your time, and I think just to leave folks with this glimmer of hope is that you have said that the inevitable conclusion is that we will return to our constitutional republic, because there's just no way that this type of tyranny will prevail in the United States of America, is there?
And not in the long run, no. In the short term, things might be very difficult, but I have a lot of faith in our Constitution and in the American people, and I am convinced that in the long run, freedom will prevail.
Well, thank you so much. I really sincerely can't thank you enough for your time. Is there a call to action here for people? Can they support you by buying your latest book? Tell them how to get to you on your website.
Well, go to survivalblog.com. Everything that has been posted at my blog is absolutely free. All of the archives are fully searchable. They go back now 6 years. There's thousands and thousands of posts, articles, letters. It's all fully searchable, all free. People should take full advantage of that. If they want to buy one of my books, that's fine. But my main goal in doing these interviews is just to encourage people to get prepared. And it doesn't require any particular political affiliation. It doesn't require any particular purchase from any particular company. I just want to see people get prepared.
Yeah, and as we know, any journey begins with the first step, so you've really probably inspired a lot of people here to get started. So, well, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless. Bye.
Well, that's it, guys. Much more to come. Thanks for tuning in, and visit sgtreport.com for all the latest. Good night.